Today we're going to be doing the board setup for the cooperative game Robinson Crusoe, heavy on the survivor theme. As we lay out the board, large board, there's going to be a lot of things going on here, and as you can see, the theme throughout the board stays consistent with this game. A lot of fun. Setup at first can seem a little lengthy, but it flows really smooth, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing we'll do is there are up to 4 characters that you can play in this game. The first character is the Explorer. The Explorer character. Male and female options available for you. Next we have the Soldier. Again, with the Soldier you can choose male or female on there. Attributes and abilities are going to be exactly the same. You also have the Carpenter. And finally there is the Cook. Different characters are going to be available to the players depending on how many players are playing in the game. For example, if you're playing a 3-player game, you're not allowed to use the Soldier. So keep that in mind. Different characters available for different games depending on how many people are playing and depending on the scenario as well. We're going to start out with Castaways. This is the opening scenario, and this is supposed to be the easier of your scenarios and a good place to get started to learn how to play this game. So we're going to have our scenario card sitting right next to the board. We're going to refer to that quite often. It gives you different things, what you need for victory, what certain symbols are going to mean throughout the game, and it also tells you about the weather in the different turns of the game. Now at the top of the board you have your event track, or you have your listing on how this game flows, and so we're going to set the board up in that order. There's several decks of cards that you use to do that. So first off are the event cards. The event cards are going to look like this. They've got a particular back on there, flag with a question mark. You're going to use a particular number of these event cards based on the scenario. First scenario has 12 rounds in it, so you use 12 cards. There are 2 different types of event cards. One set that has question marks, the other set that has a book. So you're going to need 6 books and 6 question marks to make your event deck. We'll do that officially a little bit later on in the video. The next thing that you have is your morale track. That's across the top here. The morale is the overall morale for the group of survivors, and this is going to either give inspiration, determination, or take it away. The next thing there, you have your production phase. Production happens on your tiles that you've explored, or potentially the tile that you start the game with. So in the Castaway scenario, you're going to start on the beach. This is tile number 8. The number 8 is very small and down at the bottom corner there, but it'll tell you in the directions to set tile number 8 here, and this is where we're going to start. So during the production phase we would be gathering wood and food from the beach tile. Next thing that happens is the actual meat of the game, where you're starting to place out your workers and what you want them to do. So you're going to have some different options that come along with that. To get us each scenario started, you're going to have your decks handy and close to the board. So first we see here you've got a beast deck. This is going to be several different animals that you're going to encounter on the island that you're hoping to hunt for food and for pelts, for wood, or excuse me, for fur that you're going to use later in the game. So you're going to want to have your beast deck set next to the hunt spot on the board. Then you're going to have your building deck. Anytime you attempt to build something in the game, you're going to have to roll the dice and see if you're successful. If you're not successful in building, you're going to have to pull a building adventure card and resolve what it tells you there on that card. So we'll start with that there as well. Next to that is the gathering phase. Again, there's a deck associated with gathering. All the icons for all the different phases match up, and the colors for the phases match up. So when you gather, if you're unsuccessful, you're going to have to resolve the adventure that it indicates on that card as well. And there's of course the adventure exploration phase. That's your green, matches up with your green icons. It's got the spyglass in it as well, and it has certain items or certain adventures that can go wrong as you start to go throughout the game. So we're going to set that in place as well. After that, you would move into settling the camp or resting, and then you can go into the weather phase. The weather, how it affects the survivors, is based on the roll of the dice. There are 3 different weather dice that are going to be used throughout the game. In the opening scenario of the Castaways, you don't face any weather to start. So opening up, you're just going to have the weather dice close to the board, but you're not going to need them to begin with. These other dice match up with the appropriate color and symbol of their adventure decks, and these are the dice you're going to actually roll to try to resolve whether or not you're going to have to pull a card. We're going to talk more about the symbols on the dice as we get into a quick overview of the first round. Now the other items that you see here are going to be for your characters. Each character has 2 tokens that they will later place out onto the board to illustrate what they are able to do. We're going to go ahead and remove the soldier token or character card at this time, so that gives us a little more room around the board. And we'll show you what each of these guys do for you as well. In a 3-player game, you are allowed to use an extra NPC, which is the dog character. The dog can be used as an extra adventurer for you, an additional token to help you go out and do things. But as you see, he is a little bit more limited than the full characters. You also have some additional tokens that you can gain throughout the game that can help the explorers do certain things. These are build tokens. These are exploration tokens. These are gathering tokens, and again, they match up. Building is always brown, exploration is always green, gathering is always gray, and that helps it all tie in together throughout the game. You've got a token to mark your phases or which month of the year you're in. You're going to move this along the track as each turn expires. And you've got an extra hunting token that you can gain potentially to help you go hunting later in the game as well. So those are the main tokens that you're going to use throughout the game. And then of course the Z-Man provides you with several other cubes, markers, and chits that you're going to use throughout the game. And these are going to be explained to you as you pull a card. It's going to instruct you to pull inspiration tokens, markers, resources, different things like that. We're going to go over that a little bit more in our quick run through. You've got your wood tokens, unperishable food, which differs from perishable. So all of these items then you're going to want to have close to the board and available for the players throughout the game to grab as the cards instruct them to do so. So once you've got everything at arm's reach, you're essentially ready then to set the board up officially for play. You want to have your additional island hex tiles close by. As you explore the other areas of the board, you're going to pull these hex tiles, put them in place, and you're going to do you're going to be able to gather the resources that are indicated on the tile. You're also going to be able to build different items by finding resources in these new terrain types. As you start out, you're on a terrain labeled the beach. And then as you explore throughout the game, you're going to find new terrain. This is the mountain. And each terrain gives you the ability to do different things in the game to help the crew and help the survivors along. You also have, throughout the game, a number of times that it's going to refer you to the mystery deck. This deck is designed to be used differently in all the different scenarios. In the opening scenario, the main thing that you really worry about is the treasure. The treasure symbol is, in the opening scenario, the only symbol that you're going to use on these cards. So when it refers to the mystery deck, it's going to tell you to turn over the cards until you find a treasure symbol, or in other scenarios it might indicate that you want to find a trap symbol or a monster symbol, something along those lines. This gives you an idea of what a trap symbol looks like. Looks like a pit with some spikes in there, and then of course this is going to be a treasure. So you want to have your mystery deck near the board so that the players can grab the mystery cards as they come out throughout the game. Now, one of the most important things that the survivors have at their disposal are the inventions. These are items that you can try to build. And every game starts with 9 essential inventions. And these inventions are going to be different from your others because these inventions are going to have a symbol on them that indicates they are one of the primary. So anytime you see an invention that has the little triangles on either side of the name of the item, that's a starting invention, and there's 9 of them. You're going to start with those 9 every time. So you go ahead and set those out in the invention field of the board. And these are items that the players can use resources towards to try to build. And they're going to either have to draw a build card in order to be successful, or they're going to have to roll the building dice and hope for a successful outcome on the dice. Now, to add some randomness to the game, one of the first things you do there, aside from the extreme number of cards that are already placed throughout the board, another bit of random that comes with this is you're going to select 5 cards randomly and place those on your invention deck as well. And these are the extra items that will be unique to this scenario that the Castaways can try to build to help out. So these cards, as you can see, are double-sided. So it's important when you're first attempting to deal these out randomly, the best thing to do, I find, is to shuffle it up and then try to actually pull 5 off of the bottom so you can't see which 5 you're adding to the deck. Now, you may have noticed that I was separating out some other cards as well. Each of the characters comes with a certain item that they just bring with them. It's part of their character. For example, the cook, he brings with him the ability to make a fireplace. Once you build fire, the cook can make a fireplace, and that way some of the food that would otherwise spoil, he can cook and turn into healing food. So you have the cook's special ability, you have the carpenter's special ability, which is actually the snare, and then you have the explorer's special ability, which is the shortcut. Shortcut will be placed on the board, and it allows you to forage resources from an adjacent tile just like it's in your camp. So this is a really important one as well. So now you've got your event deck placed. You've started to get your exploration tiles put in place. The potential beasts that you hope to be hunting for food and for pelts is in place. Your different adventure decks that could result from attempting to build, attempting to gather, and attempting to adventure are all in place. You have your weather dice available for when the scenario calls for them. And you have your invention deck that's set up with your 9 essentials and then your 5 randomly drawn extra items. At this point, you're going to want to determine who is going to start the game, and just for the purposes of the demonstration here, we'll just start it right on the Explorer. So this token is actually your beginner, or the indicator of who's the captain of the round, and it's going to move after each phase, after each round, to the next player. The only thing that this indicates really is which player receives or pays on the morale chart, depending on how things are going within the camp. If the morale phase comes along and you're receiving 2 inspiration tokens, then those inspiration tokens are going to go to the player that has this disc in front of them. The rulebook also suggests that if the players can't agree on what they want to do in this round, then the player with this token kind of has the final vote. So, but aside from that, it's just a placekeeper to let you know who will receive the benefits or have to pay the penalty for your morale track. I think that pretty well gives you a good idea of all the pieces, where they need to be, how they are set up, and why they are where they are throughout this exciting cooperative game. And we're going to take a deeper look at the mechanics of a round of play here in just a minute. Alright, one of the most important things to get each scenario started, of course, is going to be indicated in the rules. It's going to tell you which event card to start the scenario with. So for Castaways, you always start with the event card called Food Crates. We're going to place food crates in what they refer to as the threat deck. This portion of the board here has got 2 spaces, which means you have 2 turns before this card comes off the board. And if any of the cards come off the board, then you have to pay the tax that's indicated at the bottom of the card. This is the first card in the first scenario, and so as you may be able to see, if it comes off without being resolved, there is no effect. So they take it easy on you a little bit to start out, but trust me, it doesn't last for very long. So you set out your first event card, then you need to build your event deck. We talked about this briefly before, but now we have to actually put it together. So you look on your scenario card for the number of phases in this scenario. There are 12, which means we need 12 event cards. But as we also mentioned earlier, there are 2 different types. There's half of the cards that have a book symbol on them towards the top, and half of this deck is going to have a question mark on it, and that question mark could be any one of the 3 colors that correspond with building, gathering, or adventuring, exploring. So we're going to randomly select 6 from our question mark adventure deck. We're going to lay those out, and we're going to then add 6 from our book deck. Again, just kind of randomly shuffle them out, place them on the board until we get a total of 6 cards from each type of adventure deck, or excuse me, event deck. And then you're going to shuffle those together, and this is going to be the actual event deck that you're going to use in this scenario. So we can quickly mention the replayability of this game is through the roof. You've got all of these cards that are not even going to be used in this scenario. So you can play this scenario many, many times and see a different outcome, or see different scenarios, different events, different things that you're going to have to try to solve come up each time. So we've got our event deck in place. We know we're going to be starting on the beach, so we need to mark that beach with our camp indicator. This is a 2-sided piece, as a lot of the pieces in the game are. You start out with a simple camp. You're going to be sleeping under the stars. That's denoted by what looks like a couple of burnt logs on a fire. And then eventually you can spend some resources and upgrade to a shelter, and that looks a little bit more like a tent. So you put this token on the hex tile for where your camp is. You're going to have opportunities to move camp, and you put the tile facing the appropriate side for either a camp or a shelter. So we're starting out with our camp. Then we're going to go ahead and bring in a couple of extra items, another random part of each scenario. You always get to draw from, I believe it's 9 of these useful items. So you just randomly draw 2, and these are items that everybody in the party has access to. And they're going to help the survivors as they try and move through this scenario and survive. First, we got a hammer and nails. This is an extremely valuable card. This was a lucky pull for us. You can see here it's got 2 boxes at the bottom. That indicates this card is available to use twice. So we're going to lay this down here by our cards, or by our player cards. And to keep everybody in line and make sure you remember, you put markers on here. And each time someone uses the hammer and nails, they're going to remove a marker. When you've taken off the second marker, you've exhausted your supply, and it just is removed from the deck, or removed from the board, and is no longer available to the Castaways. The second item that we randomly drew is the Bible. This is going to pick up the morale, and morale is very important in this game. Also, can only be used twice, so we're going to place our markers on that card as well. These cards can be used at any time during the game. Certain resources and certain abilities can only be used during certain phases, but these extra items can be used at any time, as well as your determination tokens can be used at any time. The players are going to gain determination tokens throughout the round of play, throughout the course of play. These determination tokens can be turned in for special abilities. So that's what makes each character different. Each character takes wounds in a slightly different fashion, and each character has a ability to do special things around the camp to help the survivors. And the way they do those abilities is by spending determination tokens. So you're going to gather determination tokens throughout the game, and you're probably going to spend them just about as quickly as you get them, because the abilities that they allow the survivors to do are very helpful. So we've got those ready to be placed. We're going to need a marker for our morale track. You always start right in the middle on the 0. You're not going to gain any inspiration determination tokens, and you're not going to have to pay any tokens. Now, anytime that you have to pay something in this game and you don't have it, you take a wound. Wounds are going to be marked on each character along the bottom of their character cards. You're going to place a marker, and you're going to move that marker along the card to indicate when the player takes a wound. You'll just cover up the little heart symbols each time that player takes a wound. And as you can see, the players take wounds in different fashion. For example, the soldier player can start out by taking 4 wounds before he causes the morale of the group to drop down. Each time you see a little arrow in between the groups of wound markers, that means that the morale of the group drops down. There are ways that you can increase the morale for the group to hopefully keep you on the positive side, and those items is by gathering and setting up camp. It's a build action or just a character action that can be done during the production and planning phase, and it allows the characters to gain determination and morale. So we've got this marked as well. Number 3 would be our production phase. So something important to know about your production is when the resources come in, there's available immediately and then there's available later. So it depends on what part of the game you're in. During the production phase, any of your resources that come to you during the production phase are going to be available immediately, and they go into the front portion of your resources box. Items that come to you later in the game, from foraging or potentially from hunting, those items are available later, so they go into the available later portion of the resources box. So that's how you kind of differentiate, and you'll find out when the items are available based on the information given to you on the cards or in the instructions. Now, the last thing that you have to keep track with is going to be your shelter and potential roof and palisades for the shelter, as well as your weapons level. You always start at 0 on weapons, but as you may be able to see, in order to increase your weapon level, you just need to sacrifice 1 wood, and you're going to use 1 action to move your weapons level up. Conversely, with your shelter, there's a chart up here that tells you for a 2-player game you need 2 wood or 1 pelt. For a 3-player game it's 3 wood, 2 pelt. And for a 4-player game, 4 wood, 3 pelt. That's what it costs to go from a basic campsite to a shelter. And once you've created the shelter, you can turn the disc over and you can mark that the shelter is available, and now you have the ability to start building your roofs or your palisades. Palisades are essentially walls for your camp. Try to keep hungry predators out and away from your food, or maybe even yourself. Now, there is an option where you may discover a cave by exploration, and that cave can offer shelter, and you are able to build a roof or palisades around a natural shelter as well. That would save you from having to spend resources to build a shelter, and you can still go ahead and improve that shelter by building a roof or palisades. But you're going to start out with your markers over here to indicate to you that you can't do that action just yet. So at this time, what was once a very blank looking board you now see is full of pieces, markers, and options for all the different things that you can do. The last thing that we probably need to do is go ahead and mark our one terrain that we've discovered. We start out on the beach. The beach terrain is a symbol that looks like a little beach with a palm tree. So you're going to mark any of your items that are available to be built that have the similar icon, and the only one is going to be the shovel. That beach icon matches the icon which we've already explored. So you put a marker on that beach, and this tells people that when we get to the building phase, we can now build the shovel. We can't build any of these other items because we don't have the requirements just yet. But we're going to get those requirements as we move on now into round 1 of actual gameplay.